The Rotary Club of Little Rock. Also, happy Super Tuesday. Terry's here with us. I can't believe it, but she's got her hokas on, so she's ready to do some work today. So before we get started, let's invite Christian O'Neill up to do the five-way test pledge and prayer, and then Terry Hollingsworth is going to come up and do our guest introductions. So.
Good morning. Please join me in the five-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Is it fun? All right. Join me in prayer, please. Creator and sustainer of all that is or will ever be, accept our thanks for this day and all its blessings. We ask that you guide and direct our club, our leaders, and our actions. Grant that each of us may feel our responsibility to Rotary, to our community, and indeed to all countries and peoples. Bless our fellowship today, and bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies. In your service, amen. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. And with the Make It Fun, make sure you make it fun and go to the polls today. All right? Yes. Excellent. So our guests today, we have Courtney Bradford, Suzanne Ornelas, Jessica McDaniel, who's the guest of Nate Coulter, Marcy Paul, I think this is Paul, P-A-U-L, guest of Jennifer Ronell. Would you guys please stand? I'm sorry, should have asked you to do that. Heather Zabinden, the guest of Nate Coulter. Did I say that correctly? All right. Ashley McBride, guest of Kim Kirkman. Leslie Norris, guest of Debbie Davis. Veronica Brazadilova, guest of Jay Barth. All right, thank you for coming. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Terry. So we had a fabulously fun week last week with Club 99. We had an awesome social outing at Top Golf. You'll see some of the fun on the screen here coming up that I'm sure these guys will pull up. But pretty proud to say that I won in my group and I had the longest drive. And I don't even golf. So it was awesome, but we had a great ton of fun. So thank you to Mandy Richardson and Karen and that social team who put that together. We also had a great follow-up to that in an additional fun moment Saturday morning, thanks to Dan Parker, our service chairman, and Kelly Fleming, who's the executive director of Habitat for Humanity. We had about 15 Rotarians at Miss May's house, and we did, the final we did some landscaping at the house. The inside is almost done, and so we focused on landscaping. It was a really fun morning. Thank you to everybody that came out. Past President Denver found a snake while raking. Then past President Kenny Gibbs picked it up, pretended like he was going to throw it at me. It was a whole thing. It was a scene. But big thanks to everybody who organized that. And look for a date in April where Habitat's going to do a dedication of her house. And so I hope we have some Rotarians there to help celebrate that. Also, 'tis the season for allergies, so sorry about that. But also mark your calendars for our next social event. It's going to be amazing. April 19th, Prosecco's and Pickleball. So we are going to be one of the first large groups in the new indoor pickleball facility at Little Rock Athletic Club. It's going to be super fun. You do not need to know how to play pickleball. There'll be demos, there'll be lessons. There will be some friendly competition, so watch out for Kenny, definitely. But if you don't play, you can just sit there and watch Prosecco and watch the others play. It's gonna be super fun, but if you haven't played, I think it's a great time to come out and see what it's all about and see that beautiful facility that they've built. So mark your calendars for that. And then thanks to you guys who have stepped up to sponsor our March 26th Police and Fire Awards. I know you guys have heard me talk about it, excuse me, quite a bit, but it's going to be a great event. I hope that all of you guys plan to attend. We're really refreshing the event this year. We're going to do videos of a lot of the award winners. We'll have a nice program. We're encouraging them to bring their families, so it's going to be a really fabulous event. Thanks again to Ed Owens and Becky Finney for heading the team on making that special. All right, so for our guest, each year we have a theme for Club 99. This year is the power of fun, and so I typically kind of get a little fun tip each week. Actually, this week I'm going to keep it pretty short because we have a longer member video this week that we literally just couldn't edit because it's so good. So, and there's going to be a little bit of fun Club 99 history in it, so I'm going to keep my remarks short so that we can play this fabulous video. But one thing this member video reminded me of this week is really how important it is to take those passions from your childhood, from when you were a youth, and really continue those well into adulthood. And, you know, we've talked in the past weeks about this. I've told you I'm back to tap dancing. That was kind of my love as a kid, and it brought me a lot of joy. You know, tapping into those things, see what I did there, that brought you joy as a young person really is part of that secret to the power of fun. But you, A, have to make time for it, and you, B, have to cultivate situations and relationships that really help you nurture those. So this quote from George Bernard Shaw is a great reminder of that. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And I'm telling you, this member video is perfect. It's a great example of this. So roll that video.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. I'm Larry Allman with Allman Recycling, and if you don't believe I'm Larry Allman, I can prove it because here's my St. Vincent's birth certificate from 1959. I'm from Little Rock. I went to grade school at Anthony, and we had a really tough class. We had Warren Stevens, Denise Dillard, French Hill, myself, and others, and we caused a lot of trouble. Then after that, I went to public school, graduated from Hall, and then went to Colorado State. After Colorado State, I went in to my grandfather's business, which is recycling, metal recycling, and my dad was taking care of it back then, and I worked there for over 45 years. We've sold it 3 years ago to the Rennell family, and I'm still working. I love it. I love what I do. I have a lot of fun with my Rotary Club history, Club 99. The founding club president was Sidney Brooks. And Sidney Brooks' first call to order meeting was July 6, 1923. And he was the president that year. And the year after that, he realized that nobody took any records. And he thought that the most important position at Rotary would be the secretary. So after that, he decided that he would resign as president and he would be secretary. And he was secretary up until 1952. He nominated his son-in-law, which was Lewis Rosen. He later became president. And the connection between those two is Sid Brooks was my wife Jan's great-grandfather, and Lewis, who introduced me to Rotary, was her grandfather. So there's a lot of family connection there. So as I said, I have a lot of fun with the history of Club 99. The first history book was done in about 1972, but I have got Sid Brooks' first roster from January 14th, 1914. So as an Arkansan, everybody or a lot of people hunt and fish, I realize that's not very unique. But I do have a unique twist to where I hunt and fish. I go to crap Acres, which is 6 miles west of Stuttgart. If you take the first letter of the last name, Karchmer, Rosen, Alexander, and Phillips, it spells Crap Acres. So that's how the name came about. And for the last 4 decades, I have had a lot of fun duck hunting and fishing in our 100-acre reservoir and our 300 acres of green timber. So one component of duck hunting is calling, and I have a collection of duck calls. I've got large duck calls, and I've got small duck calls. This is the very first duck call that my dad gave me when I was 12. I've got weird duck calls and traditional duck calls, and this particular one is a rich and tone duck call. And this was given to me by, at the time, Governor Clinton. I know it doesn't sound very sexy or fun, but I like to wake up early and I'll do a workout session. I've done yoga for 30 plus years, but I like the morning time because nothing's had time to screw up yet.
And as I said, I've done yoga for over 30 years. That's how I have fun. Namaste.
I've always had a love of photography. I had my own dark room growing up, and I've seen some absolutely incredible concerts over the many years. And I still go to concerts today. I saw Van Morrison last month. I've seen the Grateful Dead a couple of dozen times. And I've taken all of these pictures with my Nikon F. Johnny Winter, who's passed away. I think you've heard of this guy, George Harrison, Creedence Clearwater, Jethro Tull, and of course the Grateful Dead. I've seen Santana and Jeff Beck, and of course you know this guy, Bob Dylan. So I thought I'd tell you the first time that I ever went to Cuba. I went with 5 guys on a boat. We were fishing in Grand Tortugas, which is outside of Key West, and we decided the boat captain was Cuban, and he had family in Cuba, in Havana, and he asked us if we wanted to go on ahead and a boat down there. It'd take another 3 or 4 hours. And we said, what the heck, might as well. And 2 of us did not have passports. I did not have a passport, and coincidentally the others did. So we boated down there and we got processed. The 2 people that did not have passports were incarcerated. So I could not get out of the Hemingway Marina for the next 2 days. That's the bad news. The good news is we had pools, we had bars, we had cigars. The only thing we had to do was sleep in a tent, and everything else was just fabulous. But I'm sitting at a bar and smoking a cigar, and I hear this, "Hey Larry," and I look over, and I'll be damned if it wasn't George Eldridge from Doe's, who's a friend of mine. So the next hour we smoked a cigar and had some more beers, and it was just an incredible small world story. But after that, I made another 22 visits or such and really absorbed the culture. I love the rum and the cigars. So as one of my favorite performers would say, it's Jimmy Buffett, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so I might as well partake. And I'm gonna finish off with a Cuban cigar. This is a Cohiba. This cigar in Europe would be over $200, but that's not what I paid for it. So that's how I have fun.
Epic. We've had some pretty good member videos, but that one was epic. When Jane said, Larry did a handstand in his video, and I was like, I don't believe you. He did. It was awesome. That was his man cave, too, that we took that in. So good. All right. So now I'd like to invite Club 99er Shannon Hurd to the podium to introduce today's program. Shannon is Associate Director of Executive Education at the Walton College at the U of A and is a really good front porch painter. She was out there on Saturday morning, so good job.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am extremely honored to introduce our panelists today on the impact of women of color in Little Rock. And as a fellow Arkansan and also a Black woman, I am just extremely honored to do this. So let's go ahead and get started. New Orleans native Quantia M. Key Fletcher makes it her mission to ensure that the beauty, value, and significance of the African American experience is curated and celebrated. She currently serves as the director of the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, a museum of African American history in Little Rock after serving 8 years as deputy director. Key joined Mosaic Templars prior to its 2008 opening and has helped develop the Cultural Center into the only state-funded Black History Museum in Arkansas. She led the effort to achieving national accreditation for the museum in 2020, a distinction held by only 3% of museums in the US. Her expertise in the preservation of Black experience spans over 19 years in the field of cultural studies and museums, including her work for the US Department of Interior with the National Park Services. In 2022, she and her team hosted the largest Juneteenth celebration in her agency's 13-year history. She successfully completed a major funding project last year totaling $3.5 million, the first of its kind for the museum, which will ensure the continued preservation of the Arkansas Black experience. She is a graduate of the Jekyll Island Management Institute for Museum Professionals. She holds a BA in journalism and a master's degree in English, folk life, and Southern culture from Northwestern State University. Amanda? All right. Sybil Jordan Hampton is a lifelong educator and social justice foot soldier. As the first 3-year African-American graduate of Little Rock Central High School, Day Tigers, in 1962, Sybil makes presentations and leads discussions with young student visitors at the National Park Service's Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site, uses Zoom and Teams to work with students in their classrooms across the nation and in Northern Ireland, as well as airmen in Saudi Arabia and at the Little Rock Air Force Base. She recently made an International Day to End Racial Discrimination presentation, answered questions about her role in the Central High desegregation struggle, and discussed what it means to be inclusive for RSW group employees worldwide. Prior to retiring in 2006, Sybil served as the president of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation in Little Rock and contributions manager, education, and culture at the GTE Corporate Foundation in Stamford, Connecticut. She spent 23 years in academic administrative positions at Iona College, the University of Wisconsin, and Southwestern University. Following her retirement, Sybil served as interim general manager for the Arkansas Symphony Orchestra and continues to work as a consultant and public speaker, focusing on issues related to economic, educational, and social justice, governance, strategic visioning and planning, as well as academic advising and student developmental support services. She traveled to Northern Ireland as a result of a grant awarded by the American Embassy in London and Corrymeela to speak primarily with high school students throughout the country about the American school desegregation struggle after the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. Sybil earned her undergraduate degree in English from Earlham College, an MS in teaching from the University of Chicago, and a Master's of Education and Doctorate of Higher Education from Columbia University's Teachers College. All right, next we have Stephanie Sims, who is the Supervisory Museum Curator for the Clinton Presidential Library Museum. In 2015, she became an archivist for the Clinton Foundation, solely managing President William J. Clinton's collection of personal papers and objects. She assisted with multiple exhibit installations with Nora and the foundation staff during her tenure. In her current role, she is responsible for planning, supervising, and executing the programs and activities of the museum. In 2019, Stephanie became the museum director for the University Museum and Cultural Center at the University of Arkansas in Pine Bluff, a role which required planning and developing the mission, goals, and objectives for the administration of museum programs, assessing museum artifacts and textual documents for appropriate conservation measures, and implementing and executing numerous temporary and permanent exhibitions. She earned a BS in Visual Arts from UAPB and a Master's in Public History from the University of Arkansas in Little Rock. Come on up.
Microphone check. Yep, they are hot. All right, ladies. Let me first start by saying that it feels really good to moderate a conversation with people that you already know, with people that you already respect, with people that are doing the work and that are very passionate about it, and people who have made it's their life's work and journey to be able to do this type of work. So I'm super excited that I'm not sitting with people that were chosen from somebody else, but these are ladies that I know that I respect in the field that are doing the work. And so the conversation that you hear today will be authentic, true, funny, brave, poetic, and will really share the work that we do in a way that I hope is moving, in a way that we hope that you will take with you, that will resonate, and that you will share with other people as well. So thank you so much, ladies, for agreeing to be a part of this conversation today as we talk about Women's History Month. And so we enter the scene today, we enter this conversation talking about Daisy Bates and the power of women of color on our state. We think about Daisy Bates, and her name is one that we know of being someone who was a civil rights activist, someone who was a wife, a mother. Even though she didn't have her own children, I would say she was a children to many. I would say that she's one of the names that's heralded in terms of civil rights in Arkansas, right? And so the March on Washington, she was the Arkansas State Press owner, and all of these things. And she was an amazing, phenomenal woman, and we want to make sure we honor her. But in doing that, we enter the scene talking about her, but there's so many other African-American women, so many Black women, so many women of color. Whichever one you choose to use, whichever one you're comfortable with, we can't deny the fact that the reason that we're here today is because of some of those women. And so I'm going to start with Dr. Hampton. Would you share with us some of the stories of other Black women who've paved the way that maybe we don't know about, whose maybe names have not been mentioned as much as Daisy Bates?
Good afternoon. How many of you have been in the Robinson Center and have had an opportunity to spend time in the William Grant Still room? Well, William Grant Still's mother was Carrie Lena Fambeau Still Shepperson, and she was born in 1872. And although she was born in Mississippi, after the very tragic and early death of her husband, she moved to Little Rock because her mother was living here, and she brought her son, William Grant Still. The thing that is so important about Carrie is that she was a teacher. And so she became one of the first Black teachers here in Little Rock, and she was an English teacher at the Union School. I'm going to name schools that you may not know about. The Union School, Capitol Hill School, and the M.W. Gibbs High School, which is now an elementary school. She was a person who was enterprising, and so when Capitol Hill, which is the elementary school that I attended, the elementary school that my mother attended, the high school that Florence Price attended, didn't have a library, and she devoted time to making sure that there were funds to have a library for those children. And the way she did it was to work, she was a musician too, and she worked with young people so that throughout our community, young people would put on a program. And at that program, they sold tickets, and it was from the ticket sales that they were eventually able to build the first library that was in a high school here in Little Rock. It's important for me to talk about Carrie Shepperson and to, as the mother of William Grant Still, because often as we travel around the country, people are so surprised that Little Rock and Arkansas is so rich, and that we didn't fall off the backs of turnip trucks. Yeah. And so it's so exciting to be able to say that there was a club that really mirrored the Aesthetic Club, and it was called the Lotus Club. And the women in the Lotus Club were doing things like the Aesthetic Club. They were giving papers and they were giving recitals. And what they were doing is that they were making a way out of no way. And that way was not just to survive, but it was to thrive and to build this incredible foundation that many of us stand on. And they were doing it for me, but they were also doing it for Arkansas.
It reminds me of the quote from Madam C.J. Walker, who says, "We don't wait for things to happen. We get up and we make those things happen." And when you talk about the mother of William Grant Still, it reminds me of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who I feel like in the most recent years has really come to prominence in terms of her being the forerunner for those like Elvis Presley. And so when we think about those women who are definitely leading the way in all areas in Arkansas and also in Little Rock, some of those women have also been highlighted here at the library. Tell us, Stephanie, what is your work like every day when you get a chance to curate and work with others in the museum, in the library, and how important is it to you to make sure that these women are celebrated here as well?
I think my favorite part about what I do is the creativity and the room to be creative. That's not something that everyone can casually just say. So when that happens, we want to make sure that the narrative is told and accurately, no matter how that may make someone feel. History is not always comfortable. It's not. But somewhere in there, the drive is to make sure that that story is told. So here, we have so many different programs, we have so many different exhibits. Was just within the last year, we actually had an exhibit about women and with tapestry and with quilts. If you guys missed it, you definitely missed the treat. But that was something where we were able to kind of go on and explore a narrative in a different way through visuals. So it's vital mainly because who's to say that when you're telling a story or when you're telling a narrative, who that would attract? Who would take that home with them? That can be the one motivation that's needed for someone who may decide that they want to give up. There could be someone who was thinking like, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. And then here is a photograph, or there's a story out in an exhibit that's something that Hillary achieved. And they go, wow, I can do that. So that's what it's all about.
And I think seeing women in historic positions that you may not have seen women in before is really important, because then other little girls get a chance to say, wow, I can do that. And so, Dr. Hampton, when we think about the Central High crisis, again, the point of entry for a lot of people are the Little Rock Nine, but we know that there's so many others that came after the Little Rock Nine. The work that you're doing in education right now is absolutely amazing, and we've had some of that work in the museum that's sharing the story of all of the countless others that came after the Little Rock Nine. But could you share a little bit about what it was like coming after them, and some of the women and some of the people who were involved in the story, and what that was like for you and for others that were involved in the crisis, and I would say post-crisis, I should say, but also that experience of making sure that those stories are known as well, and that they're not lost and forgotten in history when we talk about the narrative, and it's important to share your voice and your story.
Thank you, Key. From 1957 to 1971, not one African-American student attended Little Rock Central High School who was not handpicked by the Little Rock School Board. And I was a part of the second group of those students. 3 of us were selected after the 2 of the Little Rock 9 returned to the school. And what's really important, I think, because what we're talking about standing on the shoulders, certainly I stand on the shoulders of the Warrior 9, and I stand as an example to young people that there were a number of us who were foot soldiers and our names are not known. And I say to young people, it's okay to be a foot soldier because the generals would not win any wars if the foot soldiers didn't show up and do what they were supposed to do. And it's very important for our young people today who believe that there's nothing that they can do that'll be noticed to understand that so much of what matters is done by people whose names are never known. It's hard, I think, to say there's not much to be said about what happened to most of us because it wasn't dramatic enough to be in the newspapers. In the beginning, we were all shunned and not spoken to. For me, over 3 years, no one spoke to me. And so it's not so much being able to tell stories that draw people as much as it is to be able to help people understand that there are so many sacrifices that have been made, and that the sacrifices are not just unique. There were sacrifices by immigrants who came from Italy, you know, that in our state, there have been many people who've made many, many sacrifices. But it does, I think, I think this program today is very important because it should be a catalyst. One of the things that Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, one of the things that Winthrop Rockefeller believed, Governor Rockefeller believed, was that we should give gifts that keep on giving. And the spirit of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation is that. And one of the magnificent gifts that we have given to the state of Arkansas is the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. And I don't know how many of you know the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, but it represents the only encyclopedia housed in a library system, but it also is an opportunity to tell the stories of people who you think are important. It's a place that people, you have an opportunity to talk about people who are important in your community, in your life. And so, Key, I would say to you that there are numerous young people who went to Central between 1957 and 1971 in particular, who left Arkansas and went on to live extraordinary lives. And I hope we'll have time, over time, to tell some of those stories so that we can understand that out of desperate situations, there can be beauty and there can be strength.
One of my favorite quotes by Dr. King is, "Our life begins to end when we become silent about things that matter." And having had that experience, you lending your voice to share what it was like is so powerful. Fun fact, I know because you guys like to have fun here. Before I came here, I worked for the National Park Service, and I saw an opportunity to work at Central High National Historic Site, and it was my dream job. Like, I was like, oh my God, if I could work there, it would be like the most fabulous thing ever. And I got a chance to start working there during the 50th commemoration of the desegregation of Central. And I know you probably don't remember this because you've met so many people. But one of the first things that the superintendent at that time told me was that I needed to meet you and to learn your story. And as I have done the work at Mosaic Templars, I've come to know you even more. And so when you talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, I would have never gotten the job at Central High. Now, there would not be a Central High National Historic Site if it wasn't for the work that you did, if it wasn't for the work that the Little Rock Nine did. And so those stories are powerful, but as we continue, as you said, to share the stories of these powerful women, we're in all those fields. We're in civil rights, we're in music, right? We are in politics, we're in agriculture. And there's one special woman whose story is absolutely phenomenal. She lives in rural Arkansas, and she has been paving the way in agriculture for years, and most people in this room probably don't know her name.
That person is Annie Zachary Pike, and she lives in Marvel, Arkansas now. She was born in 1931, and she was an African-American Republican. And she lived on this incredible farm. When her husband died, she stepped up, and she took care of that farm and enlarged it. And her education in Arkansas was so interesting because she went to a small school in Phillips County, in Monroe County, that was called the Consolidated White River Academy. And it was a coeducational boarding school founded in Monroe County by Black Baptists in 1893. And after she completed that, she went on to St. Louis, and she went to the segregated Homer G. Phillips Hospital School, where she became a nurse. But she met this phenomenal man who was a farmer and dedicated to farming in the Marvel, Arkansas. And she came back there and became phenomenal in the community. And when Governor Rockefeller began to run, she was one of the key leaders who stepped up to get people to go out to vote. And after he won in 1966, she was the first African-American appointed to a board in the state of Arkansas.
Her story is phenomenal. She is such a colorful character. She's still alive today. And so again, when we talk about leading the way in rural Arkansas, women doing the work. Stephanie, we know that before you came to Little Rock, you were in Pine Bluff. And you were doing the work there. And so when we begin to think about rural Arkansas, and we began to move towards the Delta, I'm reminded of Eliza Miller, who, much like Ms. Pike, after her husband died, she took up the call of continuing to do work and became the first woman in Arkansas to actually own and operate her own movie theater. And so when we think about the amazing work that women are doing, not just in Little Rock, but also across Arkansas, but particularly in the Delta, Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of the work of African-American women in the Delta and the work that you were doing when you were at UAPB and in Pine Bluff?
Well, for one, like having this conversation today, we hear certain names that we hear all the time. So while I had my time at Pine Bluff, my mission was to definitely bring some of those names to attention. And so I would say that one of my favorite stories was of a woman named Carolyn Jackson. Carolyn Jackson was it still is, a huge advocate for civil rights and how her career started. She was 13 years old. Wow. And what was happening at that time, it was 1960s. So that was during the creation of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And also there was the Pine Bluff movement. So they had a lot of the different sit-ins going on in Little Rock, and then it just kind of matriculated down to Pine Bluff. Well, when she saw all of these big kids, is what she said, going out and doing the sit-ins at the F.W. Woodworth, downtown Pine Bluff, and she says, I want to help with that. And being 13 years old, can you imagine how much courage that is? And the things that she saw, the people that she met, she still remembers stories of meeting the late comedian Dick Gregory. And he was arrested in Pine Bluff, if no one knew, in 1964. He actually went to eat at, which is now Kib's Barbecue, if you guys are familiar with Pine Bluff on University. But at the time, it was Ray's Barbecue and Truck Stop, and they were arrested there for having dinner there. And she talks about all of these stories, and one of the things that she talked about was about how when they went to do a protest at the McDonald's there on Main Street, and they were all arrested while she was there. She's 13 now. And one of the people there that was working, and they said, does your mother know that you're here? And she said, yes, she does. She does know I'm here. And she said that person was so mean to her. She was 13. Fast forward, she recently retired as a nurse. Imagine being a nurse and you walk in and the patient is the person that treated you so mean while you in jail. And she says, you have no idea who I am. And the woman says, no, I don't. And she said, you remember a little girl, 13 years old, arrested in 1964, and the woman started crying. And she said, I am so sorry. She said, it's okay, it's already forgiven. So that's strength in itself. Sometimes we kind of think about harboring all of these different memories and things like that, but she decided to let it go. She forgave her and went on and still did what she was supposed to do. And a lot of times we have to show up, regardless of how we feel. We have to show up. So my work when I was there was to tell those different stories, because so often we hear about a lot of men being in the forefront, and there were women there too. And so another thing as far as with that, there was a building that was on University Drive. It was called the Williams Building. It was owned by a couple. And on that second floor, that was the headquarters for SNCC. And they would walk just less than a mile down the street on Kings Avenue, and they had their the Freedom House. And they would go there, they would meet, they would have meetings and things like that. And so just to hear all of these stories, and I'm one that visualizes, because I'm also an artist, so I like to kind of have a visual. So being able to see and actually go to those locations and everything that she mentioned, that was remarkable to me. And so as far as with Pine Bluff, there was so many women as far as with education. There was so many women that were there as far as with music, and of course her name escapes me, but we had someone who was on staff at UAPB back when it was Arkansas A&M, and she was a composer. And she actually did a lot of tours, and she went off and kind of toured with so many different entertainers during that time, like in the mid-40s. Of course, when I walk off the stage, that's when I think of her name. But so having the space to actually kind of bring those names up, and one of the things I do appreciate is that when we do have these different conversations, we can talk about how, like, hey, there's somebody right here in the state that was doing that. Outside of Little Rock, there was some people that was in Stuttgart and all of that. And so my family is originally from here. So when I would hear all of these stories, and then working on campus, you hear so much more. And I will say, and I'm gonna put this out here, it's very important to do oral histories, especially with your elders and your family. I'm saying that right now. And from my own experience, I missed the opportunity with my great-grandmother to do an oral history with her. Anyone that has someone that's the eldest in their family, please do an oral history. Ask them questions about things that they know about. Because believe it or not, those oral histories can kind of bring light to a lot of different situations that you might have been thinking about and weren't sure on. So I definitely encourage you to do that.
Oh my gosh, there's so much you said that I want to unpack, but I know I don't have all the time. One of the things I do remember, is Carolyn, is it Carol or Carolyn? She spoke to our youth a couple of years ago for MLK Challenge. We did a virtual, and she talked to them about that, and so it was great for her to share her story. The other thing is, you were so instrumental with us in the museum when we did our exhibit on Don't Touch My Crown, and about the history of Black women in their hair. And I think it was your dissertation that you did on that. And so like you said, just that research, we won awards for that exhibit. So I just want to say thank you for your contribution to that work when you were, that was how I first met you. And I was like, I love this woman. She knows all this stuff about Black women and Black hair.
We've been stuck together.
We have. I'm gonna get my gift from you after this.
Yeah, I feel
But
so
the
bad.
other thing, there's this quote that says, well-behaved women seldom make history. And we've seen this, I've seen this quote so much, but I've often pondered, does that quote apply, or did that quote apply when we think about the women like that we're talking about, Pike and Bates, and all of these women who, in the early 1900s and all these things, well-behaved women seldom make history. How do you think, does that apply? How do you think that applies in terms of women of color, Black women?
As a very not well-behaved woman, I'd like to say that
No.
there's so many ways in which you can unpack that. When you think of the difficulty for voting and daring to, Ms. Pike really mobilized people to vote and help people to get, pay poll tax. And so that's one of the ways of not being well behaved. I think that it means pushing beyond the boundaries. It means no doesn't mean never.
Delayed but never denied.
It's so, I want you to know that this is an emotional conversation for us because it is very personal. And in this time, we are doing what we do because we really do want to keep hope alive. And we want our young people to understand that they should not give up and give out. And so it's really important to be here today because the people in this room really are people who have such incredible influence in our community. And so we are very happy to reach out, not only and touch you, but to reach out and to encourage you to understand that our story is your story. Arkansas, at the end of the Civil War, was considered to be the land of opportunity for ex-slaves. And Bishop Henry Turner, who was in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, created these incredible flyers that he sent all around the South, encouraging ex-slaves to come to Arkansas. And some people say, oh my goodness, how could that have been? Well, he was right. He was right. Everything hasn't gone as well as we have expected. And at 79, I thought life would be different and we would have advanced in many, many ways. But I can say to you that we are on the right path. We have to hold on and hold out. No is not never.
Also respond to that.
How do you follow up behind that? I love you, Dr. Hampton. It definitely goes for today. And it's amazing how you don't realize that you make history after it's done. And so for the people that we're talking about today, they just look at it as this is something that has to be done. If nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. How often do we have that same mentality? Like, my favorite phrase is, I figured it out. And I have said it so much to where someone has stopped me and say, no, we're going to help you figure it out. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that. I say it again, I'm not used to that because so often I have to figure it out. So when you think about women who are in the history books and some that are not, everybody is a depiction of history. Everyone is history right now. Everything that you're doing, even when you feel like it's a minor task, it's history, it's historical. And so one of the things that I think about is don't ask for permission, just do it. Because guess what? You might end up in a history book one day. I
love it. I feel like these are closing words. These are really powerful. The last question that I want to ask both of you ladies before we get into our Q&A is this whole idea of building your own table. As I look out in the audience, I see plenty of women who have had to build their own table, who are not invited to sit at the table. As we're thinking about this month, Women's History Month, and I think about my daughter all the time. I'm constantly, Lord Jesus, I'm building a lot of tables. But I want her to see that it can be done, that it is possible, that it is necessary. And so as we think about spaces and welcoming people and building bigger tables, what's the one thing you want to leave, the one thing that you would want to share about the importance of making room for other people at the table, so to know that we don't have to do it alone, that other people can work with us? So what's the one nugget, the one thing that you want to share with folks in the room today about opening the door, providing opportunities, building tables for other people, even those who maybe don't look like you, or maybe who don't do the same work? Whoever wants to take the question first.
It is, I think, so important to understand that, for me, there's only one race, and it's the human race. And so that the table has to be built by people who share that in common.
Oh, that's a good one.
All I need is a yes. And sometimes I don't need that. So that was my answer to that.
That's good. There's a quote, Daisy Bates says, surely the world we live in is but the world that lives in us. So I will end it on, and I will ask 4 questions from our Rotarians and their friends on today.
Can you tell us a little bit about Josephine Pankey and the things that she did? Because that's who I think of.
Josephine Pankey was this incredible woman who came to Little Rock, and she became a land developer. And that whole place, that funky place out on Highway 10, which makes people a little crazy because some of the original Pankey people are still there with their bricks in front of their house and everything. But Josephine Pankey was just incredible because she did what nobody thought she could do, and that is when she saw that people who looked like her were having problems with places to live, she was able to go to the bank, and she was able to get the money to purchase that significant amount of property out on Highway 10 that's known as Pankey's Addition. Other people will know it because there's a police substation there now, along with the community center for that community. And she came to Arkansas, and she was doing this around 1920, I think. She was a force.
As a self-professed mama's boy, my question to each of you is, tell us about your mom.
I don't have enough time.
That's not fair.
I will say it definitely took me to grow up in order to understand a lot of the decisions that she made. With me being a mother, sometimes I want to just scream at my daughter and say, I wish you would just get it. But I know it takes time. My mother showed patience. She taught me how to genuinely forgive, what that looks like. Growing up, I experienced a lot. With my mother being super Christian in the church, and my father was a bike riding, Harley riding, wild card. So there were some things that I did experience, and my mother really showed me how to act accordingly, how to put my best foot forward, and she reminds me daily to this day that I am more than enough.
My mom was a unwell behaved woman. She was always said, nobody puts baby in a corner, baby was me. And my mom is the reason why I am here, but she's also the reason why I'm in Arkansas, because my stepdad is from Blytheville, Arkansas, and we're here by way of Hurricane Katrina. And so my mom was a larger than life, phenomenal woman who never took no for the answer. That was always just the first thing. That was always just the first point of entry. And so she always taught me to push and to believe in myself and be extremely confident. And she died of COVID 3 years ago, but I felt like she gave me everything that I needed in order to be successful. If you were in a room with her, you would have not forgotten that you were in a room with her. We are New Orleans women, and so we have big personality. We're loud, but we love hard. But my mom was an amazing, phenomenal woman, and everybody in Blytheville, Arkansas, absolutely loved her. And so she was just a great individual. Yeah.
My mother was born here in Little Rock, and she was the child of a man who was 40 years old, and her mother left the home when she was 3 months old. And so she was raised by a 40-year-old father. And my mother taught me that it would be difficult to be a woman, but not impossible. And my father was never a recovering chauvinist. And therefore, he didn't think my mother should drive. He didn't think my mother should go back to college. And my mother got her car despite my father. And she went back to Philander Smith College, and then she went to the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and got her master's in teaching. She was a woman who meant business. Everybody in our church knew her as Mrs. Jordan, who would give you the eye, but they also knew that she loved hard, but she demanded much.
Just a statement. I just wanted to make sure that you all know. So you may not know that I'm your county clerk and your circuit clerk. But you may not know that I'm the first Black person to be the clerk in 200 years. So they're talking about the people around the state who've done, the women around the state, and just something as simple as I'm amongst you, and that's what happened 200 years after this county was formed. Yes. Why don't you tell us about your parents? Oh, no, this is about women.
What an incredible, thank you guys so much. That was really, really powerful. Sybil and Key and Stephanie, thank you guys so much. So we do have a little something for each of you. Thank you guys for being here. This represents, we have a new mural downtown that our club sponsored and commissioned, and it's all about Little Rock Big on Fun, but it ties into our power of fun and the joy that you can find in life. And I know you three definitely have had a lot of fun in your life and brought a lot of joy to people. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Again, I'm just kind of blown away by that panel, so I hope you are too. It was really, really fabulous. So next week is another not to be missed program. Kelly Bass, our fellow Rotarian here, and his team are going to be talking about the museum discovery. They're going to be making some big announcements about the expansion of the museum, which is a very important cultural entity in our city for children and their families. So very excited to hear their plans and glad that they're announcing it here at Rotary Club of Little Rock. So we will see you next week. We're adjourned.